Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is Lizzie and Justin from Thirdspace. We are live again. It's a Sunday morning here in London around 9 o'clock. And really what I want to say to everyone is welcome. Welcome, whether you've been with us for 180 weeks. Welcome if you've just, as a whole wonderful group of people have stumbled across us in the last week. Welcome to you too. Whether you're joining us live on Facebook, as in our Facebook group, as many of you do, and if you want to find out how to join that, just search for Turning Towards Life on Facebook and ask to join, and we will be very, very happy to let you in to this wonderful community that's here. Or maybe you're watching on our website, which is turningtowards.life, or maybe, as many people do, you're listening on a podcast sometime, who knows when. Maybe in the same week as we record this, but maybe many months, or who knows, maybe even years into the future. You're all equally welcome. We were just saying, Lizzie, you and I, what a thing it is. We can feel pleased with ourselves for doing this. And I'm feeling really, really happy that we're doing this and that we're here again and that we keep on making this happening for all that it brings. So thank you, Lizzie, for being the one who keeps me in this as well.
It's lovely to be here. And also, you might be listening on Instagram. We've just started putting these videos on Instagram too. So I think 40 people or something listened this week on Instagram. So I think it's a really good thing that we've added it to that place too. So hello, the Instagram world as well. So this week, so maybe just to recap, if you're new to this conversation, what we do is we have something at the beginning, which is a source, and we read it, each of us reads it, and then we wander into the conversation and see what happens from it. We rotate each week, so you might have noticed that one week I say hello, and the next week Justin says hello, and whoever doesn't say hello is the one that's brought the source. That's our majorly sophisticated equation for who says hello. And if I couldn't work that out for ages. I just thought Justin was really on the ball, and then he said, no, it's just because it's just the opposite of the person who brought the source. So I always snigger at myself for being so slow on the uptake on that one. So anyway, this week I've brought the source, and so Justin said hello. And this source is a poem actually from my wonderful sister Hollie, and she wrote this as, in some ways, as a kind of follow-on from the conversations we had before. And if you have been following on from last week and the week before, we had a really wonderful conversation about making requests and what it really means from a poem that I had written. So that generated this whole conversation with Holes. And then she ended up writing this poem. And on a Monday night, we have a group called Turning Towards Love, which is a combination of Turning Towards Life, which is this, and Presence of Love, which is my sister's group. And so we decided to combine them and invite people into our crazy sisterhood. And this poem came out of Holes as a way of talking in our group on Monday nights. And really it's a follow-up from the conversation on requests. So if you want to, when you've heard this conversation and you want to wander into it further, you can go back a couple of episodes into the making requests conversation. And that's also very linked into this one. So I'm going to read, and then Justin, you can read, and then we'll see where this takes us. And just to say, this is all unrehearsed. We don't know what each other's going to say, and that's the beauty of it. It's a very alive and in the moment conversation and reflection on what arises for us in response to each other, as well as what we've been reflecting on since the source got posted on Friday as well. So here we go. This is a poem by Hollie Holden, and I don't think it has a name yet, but I'm going to call it This Morning I Said No. This morning I said no when I meant no, in honor and because of all the times I've said yes instead. Did it feel empowering? No, it did not. It felt frightening, like risking it all. It felt like finally saying the thing that will make you not love me. And it felt lonely and cold. And I tried to suck it back in, rewind the tape player, kill the sound of the word with a knife. Or paint it over with pastel colors and make you a cup of tea, distract you from what I just showed you when no other word would come. But she stayed there, defiant, finally freed from the prison made of pretty acceptable please love me yeses. And I do not know what she will do next, this bright, emboldened no. She seems to like it here, out in the wild. So I'm clearing out a room full of things I thought I needed so that she can stay.
Gosh, I'm really enjoying and feeling affected by your reading of Hollie's poem, Lizzie. So I'm going to read it too. I also just want to say thank you to Hollie for bringing us this. It's so generous. And if you're listening or watching, maybe particularly if you're listening, if you happen to be in the middle of something else, this might be a moment just to pause and to see what happens if you let Hollie's words reach you in another way. This morning I said no when I meant no, in honor and because of all the times I have said yes instead. Did it feel empowering? No, it did not. It felt frightening, like risking it all. It felt like finally saying the thing that will make you not love me. And it felt lonely and cold. And I tried to suck it back in, rewind the tape player, kill the sound of the word with a knife, or paint over it with pastel colors and make you a cup of tea, distract you from what I just showed you when no other word would come. But she stayed there, defiant, finally freed from the prison made of pretty acceptable please love me yeses. And I do not know what she will do next, this bright, emboldened no. She seems to like it here out in the wild. So I am clearing out a room full of things I thought I needed so that she can stay.
Thanks, Justin. My goodness, as you were reading that, I could feel the contrast of the self that I have that says yes to everything and is spread out like my tentacles really, really wide and attending to many things and feeling into lots of things. And in contrast, the self that can find containment and like I can be the size that I actually am that's manageable rather than the size that I can be that's very unmanageable. So the self that says yes all the time is like this kind of sprawling tentacle octopus kind of feeling. And then the contained one that can say no when no is appropriate. It's like there's a dignity in it. Like I can find my uprightness and my, like a boundary that feels like the resource is appropriate to what I can be. And so that was the experience that I had when you're reading it. Like I could feel the contrast of a no saying self and a yes saying self. And all the ways that it's so easy to get into the overextension and the tentacles being way too wide for the center to be able to hold. And it feels really also really kind of counterintuitive as well. There's something about saying no and containment that feels quite like opposite of a natural tendency for me. You know, wanting everything to be okay, wanting people to be happy, wanting everything to flow. And so the inquiry of the no and what it makes possible is really intriguing because it's like new territory.
That is the remarkable thing about this, I think, Lizzie, and I hear you talk about your experience of it, is the way that Hollie's words and the no that's in the center of it open up new territory. I was, as you were speaking, I was feeling one of the things I was sort of feeling my way into was the whatever each of our patterns of no's, and you've yeses or no's, and you've done such a lovely job of giving words to yours, there's a way in which so much of the time we learn to tread familiar territory. And it struck me whether this was about anything really that changes us. Although I think the fact that this is about no's is really important. But there's a point where Hollie says, it felt frightening, like risking it all. That moment where we step out of whatever familiar pattern we've been living with, even if we've known it hasn't served us for some way, is exactly like that very often. It feels frightened and risking it all, and like we've let out something into the world that we can't have any idea what's going to happen from it. And in Hollie's words here, she says, it felt frightening, like risking it all. It felt like finally saying the thing that will make you not love me. And when I heard you read that, and I read that, I could feel the sort of deep sort of clunk of I mean that in an appreciative way, of those words. Oh yes, that's what it's like. That's what it's like when we shift some pattern that is going to focus our lives or liberate something, and never more so than when we do it in the midst of relationship with other people. And this also occurred to me whilst you were speaking, Lizzie, that sometimes our no's are just no's that don't have anything to do with someone else. I'm going to say no to myself in a way. I'm going to say no to some pattern I've had, or some certainty I've had, or I imagine, we've talked about dishwashers a lot. I imagine I always have to load the dishwasher in this way, and I'm going to say no. There's that no, but even more so when what we're bringing is in the midst of relationship with another person, and it opens up, or other people, and it opens us up into this territory of, I can feel myself holding on to the edge of my table here, like, what's going to happen from this, that I dared to do this.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was going on for me as you were talking was you were describing your own way with this, and I was trying to feel into, where do these ways begin? Like, where did it begin for me, particularly around no's? And I'm also someone, so I really identify with, see myself in this poem. It was not someone who grew up being able to say many no's, and it took me a really long time to begin to say no to anybody about anything, and to feel the power here. And it might be that this has happened in every time for every human, or it might be a particularity of our times, I don't know. But I was thinking, how often when I was at school would it have been okay to say, actually, no, I'm not going to do that piece of homework, or no, I don't want to play this sport right now, or I'm not going to come to that class? How often was that possible? And the answer is never. Like, in that world, there was no space for a no anywhere.
Yeah.
And so, although I think there are gender things around this too, I think very often men and women are socialized differently into this in our culture and all of that. I also think that there is a huge sort of shared background thing of, you know what? Your job is to say yes. Your job is not to find the thing in yourself that says, this is what matters to me and this is not what matters to me. Your job is not to do that. And so it's no wonder that it feels like risking it all when we start to find it in ourselves to bring it into the space of relationship with other people. Because everything, for many of us, everything in our background has said to us, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. And it sends me to this place where Hull says, but she stayed there defiant, finally freed from the prison made of pretty, acceptable, please love me yeses. That piece for me points to what you're speaking about, like the conditionedness of us. There's being pretty, being acceptable, being please love me, asking to be loved. It feels really like embedded in lots of the world and lots of the ways that we're taught. And so when Hull's kind of transitions from that piece into the bright emboldened no, I get this kind of giddy feeling of like, there's this no in the wild. And it's like because there's always been a no there. There's always a no. There's like hundreds of no's that get kind of popped in a black box and you can't access them. And then when you realize that you actually mean no, for me, it's like a kind of, and also when other people say no to me, I'm starting to get this kind of excited feeling. Like this week, I did a conversation with somebody where I really wanted them to do a piece of work that I thought they would be great at. And they just said, no. And the part of me was like, oh, but I really wanted you to do it. But the bigger part of me was like, oh, I'm so excited. Why are you saying no? Tell me more about why you're saying no. I'm so interested. So we had this great conversation about why no. And it opened up this territory that was like so inviting and inspiring and kind of alive. And so when Holes talks about this, the no liking it here out in the wild, if I feel like I'm kind of on some kind of precipice of a new life kind of feeling that as you say, hasn't been taught to us before. You know, we haven't been given this relationship with saying no that kind of lets the true desire or the true feeling of who we are and what we are really come to bear. So I think that's why I feel kind of, you know, I'm also kind of gripping onto the edge of my table going, well, what is this life if all of us kind of tap into this capacity to say no? What kind of world opens up? And it reminds me, Holes always says to me as well, like, that no is a cosmic redirection. And so when we receive no's as well, we can feel like, oh no, it's not happening my way or something, but there's the way that's much better than my way. So my ideas of how this should be could be completely teeny weeny by comparison to what could happen. And what if no from the other way, not me saying no, but other people saying no to me, is like a beautiful course correction or something, so that me getting my way just becomes irrelevant because look what happened when I didn't get my way. So also kind of somehow the no feels like it redirects into something far more interesting that might happen than just if we all have said our habitual yeses to all the things that got asked and everyone said yes to us. And so I feel like it is that new, quite energizing territory of like, well, now I really don't know what's going to happen. You know, if everyone starts saying no to me and I start saying no to them, like then what's going to happen? And I really understand and feel the relational riskiness of it. And that's inside of all of this. But my overriding feeling, and actually what I so appreciate this poem for, is because it paints the picture into the realms of the wild free no. And it paints us into this new territory in a kind of exciting way rather than a dreadful way or a terrifying way, because it really is a different world that gets made.
Absolutely. That when I was looking for, as I do every week, Lizzie, as you know, an image to go with our work, what I found was an owl, because that's what Hollie's poem felt like to me, was how the first thing I felt into, I thought was owls are fierce and beautiful and wild and expansive and that move, it's brilliant writing from Hollie, of course, but that move from it felt risky, it felt lonely and cold. I tried to put it away, I tried to kill it with a knife, but she stayed there and I didn't know what she would do next. And she seems to like it here out in the wild. So I'm clearing out a room to make space with. That move is so alive and real as well. And as you're talking about it and pointing our attention that way, I'm feeling very grateful for it and for what Hollie's done here, because I think for any of us who had to learn to say no, it's quite easy to learn to say it like something distasteful that I have to hold very, very far away from me. I'll
Yes.
say no, but it's kind of stinky and I don't really want it to be here, and I'll kind of put it away quite quickly afterwards, even
Yeah.
though I know I have to have one of these. And this is really different to that. And it reminds me, and it's something you pointed to when you were speaking, is so there's sometimes no's end relationships. That's the truth of it. And sometimes we have to say no. There are situations in many lives where we have to say no, even though we know that really saying our no is going to take a big fight. There are systems of oppression, for example, that require people to say no again and again and again. There's all of that, and that happens on the micro scale and on the big scale as well. And the no is just as important there as it is in what I'm about to say. But the thing that you're speaking and Hollie's writing pointed me into is that where this has the most power, can be most like this beautiful owl or whatever it is let out into the wild, is where everybody maintains the commitment to staying in relationship in the face of the no.
Yeah.
So when you were describing about somebody saying no to you about something you really thought would be brilliant for them and they wanted to do, and you commit to stay and then go, what is this thing that just got born? I wonder what this alive wild thing is here and what it might have to show. It's really incumbent upon us to learn how to be the one who will, when somebody else says no to us, who will not take up the implication that, well, that means that the relationship is over. Like, you have to be able to say no to me and me not play the part of going, oh, well, that clearly means you don't love me and you don't like me and you don't want to be in a relationship with me. If I do that, I'm playing the part of getting out the knife or forcing you to take up your pastel colors, and instead to go, I wonder what that no might mean. I wonder what that no might bring. Something I'm going to have to understand, because I was so sure you wanted this, Lizzie, whatever it was I was bringing you. I was so sure you wanted it, and you don't. What is that?
Yeah.
There's a giant space there that does require us to, first of all, I was going to say, is to stay in, even though it feels frightening, like risking it all and all of that. But I also think I'm seeing from our conversation that Hollie's invitation is for us to make a transformative move at that point, is to not just stay in the this is difficult, this is feels uncertain, yeah, all of that, but to also make the shift to go, this could be wonderful. Something could be born, something is being born here right now. So can we do that to be hopeful in that way, rather than just assuming that everything got killed because the way I wanted you to be didn't happen in the way I imagined it would happen, which itself is a dead way of relating to people anyway, that you have to be the way I want you to be all the time, all of that. That's very powerful. Actually, just as I'm saying it, I can feel the power of it.
Yeah. Me too. And I feel like not so much courage is required to say no when we're entertaining that the world that gets made by saying no is actually really cool. You know what I mean? Like we're not going, oh gosh, well, yeah, if I say no, look at all the consequences, it's going to be really hard. And there's really something beautiful that gets made when no gets said. And it feels to me that when we can discern between our yeses and our nos, and we're kind of saying that our culture and our systems have us say yes most of the time, when we get to say no when we really mean it, a much more kind of authentic world opens. So if I've been resentfully saying yes for ages, going, okay, then yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, fine, and kind of going along with it, the world that doesn't get made all of that time, and versus the world that does get made, which is a world of resentment and not really saying how I feel and smoothing things and going along for the sake of harmony, a kind of fake harmony. Then when I turn to the world that gets made from saying no, yes, different things happen, but the things that happen are like a real conversation about why, or all the things I don't think I don't agree with, and can we talk about that? And so the world that gets made when we have discernment between our yeses and nos, and we're not just doing the kind of the same old all the time. It is new territory, but it's really important territory that probably answers the for the sake of what question much more thoroughly than, so why am I doing something, why am I in this relationship, probably gets answered more fully in a world where yeses and nos are both possible versus just the world of yeses that I'm in. And I also know that there are people, and I'm not one of them, but I do know people where the immediate answer is always no. When you think, my goodness, what would happen if you actually just said yes to something and went with it? Because for some people it just goes quick, no, that's it's too big or too different, I'm going to have to say no to that. And so either way, it's new territory, like you're saying, that there's always both ways. And so what if a yes became the defiant wild one, and you're like, whoa, I'm going to say yes to some things. And of course that also applies, because a no and a yes are probably quite similar anyway. Which is, when I'm saying yes to things, I'm also saying no to things simultaneously, and when I'm saying no to things, I'm also saying yes to things simultaneously. So in a way it's just saying yes to different things when you say no. So it's just a really beautiful conversation to wander into really what's true, like what are my yeses and what are my nos, and when I say no to one thing, what am I really saying yes to, and when I'm saying yes to, what am I really saying no to?
That's really powerful territory, Lizzie, that you've got us into by saying it that way, by noticing that a no and a yes, this poem could be the other way around.
Yeah.
Hollie could have written, this morning I said yes when I meant yes, in honor and because of all the times I've said no instead.
Yes.
Absolutely, it would make the same sense. And
Yeah.
it's just that some of us got into the habit of being yes in order to have you love me, and some of us got into no in order to keep our own control over the world and all of that. And so the opening here, you said it, that lets the wild something into the world. And I think then the other part of this that seems to me really important to remember is that for those of us who I think you're talking right now about how do we start to say the other thing, and meet with that we mean that we hold back, so that we can really be here in the world and stand for the creative something that's going to come from our knowing what we care about. And I think it equally applies whenever there's a relationship. If I I'm not even sure I can say this, but on the other side of the relationship, we have to be able to say yes and no to other people, to give up our control over them. So I think the side you're talking about is where we, at least the way I heard it, is where I say yes or no to you to get you to love me or to like me or to want me or all those kind of things. The other side of it is I might want you to say yes to me so that I can feel my power here. Can I give up my demand that you say yes? Or can I give up my, anyway, I'm finding it hard to find a good way to describe this, but what it calls on for all of us is this willingness to have our relationships be the ones in which the bright, emboldened, wild thing can come into the world in between us, instead of the let's just keep everything and our dynamics exactly the same as they've always been all the time by all of the dances we do around one another. It feels really called for, and actually really called for. I'm thinking about this really, really close in, like you and me, say, or the people in our families, but I'm also thinking about it in a really bigger way. Can we be people who, could we start to say yes to the cares and concerns of others that we typically go no to in the world around us? What would happen if we let ourselves step into the bright, emboldened, wild thing that's between us, which is going to mean talking to one another and listening to one another? It feels like the scale of the invitation here is very big. The bigness of it is exciting and shaking, and I'm glad for it.
It's so beautiful what you say, Justin, and the word that popped up for me was the word genuine. you know, how to be in genuine relationship with others, especially where there is power dynamic going on, i.e. somebody else has a different level of power than the other person. And how can we be in those relationships in ways that bring genuine action rather than coerced or for just for the sake of it, or okay, you're fine because you know you've got power over me, there's consequences, I'm just going to do what you tell me because the consequences for me I can't deal with, so I'm just going to do what you tell me. How do we shift from a world that's like that to a world that is filled with genuine conversations no matter what the power differential, and allow everyone to have their whatever their voice is, whatever wants to be included gets included? How do we be those kinds of people that exist in healthy, genuine relationships so that what happens is really genuinely what's intended to happen rather than you just doing what I tell you? It just feels stale and kind of, well, yeah, we can all do that. But you know, how about something wild? How about something that actually creates something important here rather than the kind of predictable what happens because of the nature of the habitual way that we already relate. So it feels really excitingly linked into this conversation about our own power as human beings and the power that exists in creation and relationship, and how to move through the world in a very genuine relating way. And I'm so grateful for Holes for bringing this poem in this very, I mean, it's a poem, so it's, yes, it's poetic, but there's something really poetic in this one for me. It's such a big invitation. And Holly, thank you for being the person that writes these things and relating to yourself and everyone else in this way that we can learn and be invited into new conversations and new territory and feel our way in through this beautiful picture that gets made. It's really lovely. So I think, Justin, we're at the end of our time. And so I want to say thank you to you for finding your way and helping me find my way into this as well. Of course, thank you to Holly, and thank you to everybody who's listening and being with us. And please let us know how it is for you to be here. You can comment on our Facebook page underneath this video or on Instagram. You can comment under this video as well or under the source. And we'd love to hear from you. So I think, oh, you could also write a review on the podcast. I've heard that that's a really good way as well to tell us what you think and how this is to be here with us. So we're going to be back next week on Sunday with a source from Justin. And we wish you a wonderful week wherever you are. And see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.